Everyone. My name is Mariah Jeffrey. I work for Housing and Residential Education as a graphic design and marketing student assistant, and I'm here with my colleague, Alyssa.
Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa Garcia. I'm Housing and Residential Education's Marketing and Conference Services Student Assistant, and we are here today with Dr. Kirsten Olson.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Dr. Kirsten Olson. I'm the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services, CAPS, and I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and I've been working in college mental health since 2002, and I've been in a management role for the last 10 years and absolutely love working in college counseling centers with students. It's really a unique opportunity to help students grow and be successful. And so I'm really excited about this opportunity to talk with you about what our services are and try and answer some really important questions.
So I'll get started. My first question to you would be, what services do you offer and what is the purpose of these services?
Great. So we offer confidential mental health services for students. And our primary goal is to support students with their academic goals, having healthy relationships, and overall well being. We provide short term counseling, which I can talk about a little bit more, which includes individual counseling, couples counseling when both partners are students. We have a variety of group counseling opportunities. And then we do all sorts of outreach and training for students and for the campus community on how to recognize when people are having a hard time, knowing how and where to refer to counseling services for assistance. And all of our services are covered by your student health fees. And so there's no additional cost to any of our services.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll ask the next question. So, what is the biggest topic or trend people come in with when they need to talk?
Great question. So the primary reason that people come in are academic problems, certainly is number one. Number two are relationship problems or concerns, and that's any kind of relationship with roommates, with classmates, with family members, partners, faculty members. And then the other two are symptoms of depression and anxiety. And so those top reasons, academic, relationship, depression, anxiety, not only are those the primary reasons that our students come in at Channel Islands, but also the primary reason that college students across the country receive and seek out counseling services. Certainly, we see students who have other concerns, like perhaps bipolar disorder or substance misuse problems, eating disorders. So there are a wide range of services that we provide, but those are the top ones, the top reasons that people come in.
Thank you for that. My next question is, how big is your CAP staff that directly works with students?
We have 7 full-time clinicians who work directly with students. So including myself, there's 3 psychologists. We also have 3 social workers and a marriage and family therapist. And all of us have specific training and experience in working with college students. And we choose to work in college counseling centers so that we have this opportunity to help students who are not only going through school, but also dealing with all of the other things that are going on in life, like the pandemic, like social injustice and civil unrest, and all the other things that you can imagine. We also have a psychiatrist who works part-time, and he's available to evaluate students to see if medication might help, which is sometimes necessary in addition to counseling, so people can get the support that they need. We also have 2 wonderful administrative assistants who help students from the first phone call or email to get the support and resources that they need. So we have a great team, a very diverse team as well. We have clinicians who identify as Latinx and are bilingual and bicultural, so can provide clinical services in Spanish. We have a clinician who identifies as Black, two of us who identify as part of the LGBTQ community, another clinician who identifies as Asian American. And so we really have a diverse staff that can help students who have various identities or also specific concerns that they're looking for assistance with.
Thank you. Our next question is, are all meetings confidential? When are meetings non-confidential?
That's such an important question. So all of our services are considered confidential and private, which means that we cannot share with anybody about whether you're even coming to counseling or not without your written permission. And confidentiality is a cornerstone of mental health services. And it's something that we are bound to ethically, morally, legally, and because it's the right thing to do. And so let's say a family member of yours calls and they want to know if you're in counseling. We will say to them, we cannot confirm or deny whether your student's in counseling. If a faculty member refers a student over and then wants to know whether the student is in counseling, we will say to the faculty member, thank you for caring about your student and the referral, and really we cannot confirm or deny whether your student or your is being seen. There are a couple of exceptions to confidentiality that are important to know, and they're very much the exception. And the primary one you might be aware of is if somebody's really planning to hurt themselves or somebody else. So I want to be clear, students often have thoughts of suicide or of harming themselves by cutting. There's also oftentimes that people feel a lot of anger and rage and that idea that they want to lash out at somebody. We talk with students all the time about that, and that is very much confidential. When we talk about a limit of confidentiality around somebody really thinking about suicide is if somebody is planning, meaning they have a plan, they're going to kill themselves by taking an overdose, and they have medicine that they plan to overdose on, and they have a specific day that they're planning to do it, usually pretty immediately. In those situations, we have to take steps to keep people safe. We do everything we can to not breach confidentiality. Sometimes, though, when the symptoms and the intent to harm themselves or somebody else is so concerning, we do have to consider hospitalization or contacting somebody's emergency contact. But that is absolutely the last place we're going to end up. So it's really important for students to know that it's fine to come in and talk about thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself or somebody else. That does not mean we're going to break confidentiality. Really important to know. Another reason that we consider breaking confidentiality is that we are mandated reporters of abuse. So again, if somebody is describing a history of sexual abuse or child abuse, physical abuse, that doesn't mean we have to make a mandated report. It's more if somebody had an experience of abuse and there's still a concern that that person could be a threat to other children, other people who might be potential victims. So again, that's something that we talk to people about before we make any kind of report, because that also, we want that to be the last thing that we do. So we really want to make sure that we're protecting people and also protecting confidentiality. There's times that when we're addressing concerns that somebody is really going to hurt themselves or somebody else, that we might have to involve our campus police. Like I've been saying, that is the last thing we don't want to bring police in unless it's really a matter of safety. And our campus police are highly trained in working with college students. They choose to work at a college counseling in college and not just in a metropolitan police department. Our police also go through extensive training on crisis intervention, how to work with students and community members who are really in crisis, but they're not coming to get students in trouble or arrest them or any of that. We know that there's lots of people, especially in certain cultures, that involving police is it's dangerous or it feels really scary and the last thing. And so again, we really honor that. And we try to prepare people. If we're going to involve the police, they don't just show up. We prepare the student that this is somebody who's going to come in and join us.
Thank you, Kirsten. That helps a lot. It's very important. My next question to you would be, what are your hours and how long are your typical sessions?
Great. So we are open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So anytime during those business hours, somebody can call to schedule an appointment, as well as be seen for crisis intervention. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So we're open all day, every day. Right now, we actually have some 7 a.m. appointments and some 5 p.m. appointments for people who are perhaps working or taking care of families or other things and cannot come in during those business hours. So we really try to work with our students' schedules and needs. We also have 24/7 phone counseling. So the very same number that students will call to make an appointment during the day, that same number you can call anytime after hours, evenings, weekends, holidays, and students can talk to somebody, a live phone counselor right away. So those are our main office hours. As far as how long appointments are, so the initial appointment, the initial consultation is typically about 55 to 60 minutes or so, because we're really wanting to get to know students. We want to hear what's going on. We want to be able to understand the concerns that are bringing you in the door, as well as going over a lot of options and developing a plan together. So the first appointment is usually almost an hour or so, and then follow-up appointments for individual counseling are typically 45 to 50 minutes. And we also have group counseling, and those are usually between 60 minutes and 90 minutes. And so we really try to, again, tailor the needs for the student. Sometimes people just want to come in for a half an hour, and that's all they need, they get that. Other times, if somebody's really in crisis and we're trying to come up with a safety plan, we might meet with somebody for an hour and a half or 2 hours or longer so that we can make sure that people are safe to leave our office.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is the difference between short-term and long-term counseling?
I'm so glad you asked this question. It's really one that we get quite a bit. So short-term counseling is typically considered to be between 1 and 5 sessions, depending on the concern. It could be maybe up to 10 sessions. And the purpose of short-term counseling is to address what's going on immediately. So the way that we consider short-term counseling is very much problem focused. What's going on right now? Did you fail a class? Did you just break up with a partner? Or your parents just telling you that they're getting divorced? And so short term is very much about what's going on now and identifying solutions to what is the immediate problem. And so maybe somebody is taking 5 classes and it's just too much. So we can help students figure out which class to drop, how to drop it, how to work with academic advising. Maybe somebody has been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder or a learning disability, but they're not connected with our disability accommodation support services, DAS. So in short-term counseling, we might be able to get people connected with some of the other resources that they need. And typically with our college students, they often only need a few sessions to have the immediate concern addressed. And if in the short-term counseling we realize that somebody might benefit from longer-term counseling, then we help them get that. So longer-term counseling allows us to dig in a little bit deeper to some of those things that might be contributing to the acute symptoms of depression or the panic attacks. And often that's looking at family dynamics. We all are influenced and shaped by our families, for better or for worse. And so sometimes longer term counseling can help us start to get into family dynamics more. Sometimes some of the concerns are need longer term counseling, like for example, eating disorders. There's some things that we can do in short term, which is often to help people understand the nature of treatment for eating disorders, which may be longer term, which may involve individual and group and family, things like that. Longer term counseling can also be if somebody really wants consistent therapy, not because they're profoundly depressed, but because they know that they want more than what we can offer here. And for example, typically we cannot see people weekly, or if we see somebody weekly, it's going to be for 5 sessions. Whereas ongoing counseling is often weekly for 6 months or a year or so. But I know those are hard distinctions. Is there any way I can clarify that a little bit more? Because it is something that we definitely get questions about.
Yeah, so if someone wanted to receive that weekly therapy, would they be allowed to have that weekly therapy, or would you recommend them going to an outside source?
Great question. So we do not provide weekly ongoing therapy, unfortunately, even though all of us would like to do that. It's just counseling centers nationwide operate on the short-term model. If somebody needs or wants longer-term counseling, we have a clinical case manager who can help people actually connect with somebody in the community. We don't just say, hey, go ahead and find somebody. That's not what we want to do. And so if somebody has health insurance, we can help the person navigate their health insurance so that they can make that appointment. We will help students call and schedule an appointment. A lot of our students do not have private health insurance, and so our clinical case manager actually can help people get signed up for Medi-Cal, can help them find free clinics all around the area. A lot of our students are no longer physically right in Ventura. They've gone all over the state. Our clinical case manager can help people find local providers as well. Now, in the current age of the pandemic, pretty much all services are offered virtually using telemental health. And so again, our clinical case manager can help make that connection for you, which is really important. And often we'll make the referral to long term, and then we'll schedule another appointment with you in a month to make sure you made that connection.
Thank you. I think this question ties in a little bit of what you're talking about. Will you be offering services online this semester?
Yes. And as long as our clinic is in operation, now that we know students really like online counseling, not everybody, but most people have found it's much more convenient, because instead of it taking 3 hours because you have to drive somewhere, you have to park, you have to have your appointment, and then you need to figure out where to go, which can be a 3-hour time commitment, it's a 1-hour time commitment. And we find this is really helpful for students who don't have consistent transportation. A lot of our students are parents, and so they're juggling childcare. It's easier to block out an hour for childcare than 3 hours. And so all of our services right now are 100% virtual using telemental health. Even when the campus reopens and we have our clinic open, we will continue to have both. We'll have virtual as well as on campus so people have options. So I want to make a distinction between the Zoom that you use for your classes, which is just your typical Zoom, and what we use, which is called Zoom for Healthcare, which is an extremely confidential aspect of Zoom, where it's encrypted in a way that your typical Zoom is not. And so that allows us to assure confidentiality, at least of the platform that we're using. And that's really important for students to know, because it's another way that we guarantee confidentiality.
Thank you. Our next question is, what do you feel the CAPS relationship is with the student population?
That's a good question for me, and I might ask the same question of you after I answer. I believe overall we have a really great relationship with the student body. We work closely with student government as much as we can to get feedback. We really try to be inclusive and offer our services, market our services broadly. And we get a lot of feedback from students about typically it's how much we helped them stay in school or navigate relationship problems or feel better overall. And when students have more difficulty with their experience with CAPS, we take that seriously as well. And the primary thing that people give us feedback about is not being able to get an appointment. And that is something that we're constantly working on. And I can tell you from being in many, many meetings and conferences with directors across the country, this is always our struggle because we never have as many clinicians as we need to provide services for the students who really need it. And so we try all sorts of creative ways to encourage students to come and access us. And one of the main things that I think people don't understand is that if you're just okay and have some distress, but you feel like you can wait a week or two for an appointment, that's fine. But if people are in crisis, we have crisis intervention services all day, every day that we're open. The tricky thing is you have to tell us that you're in crisis so that we know that we need to schedule a same day appointment. Now we'll ask you, but you also have to be willing to tell us. So for example, some reasons that people might be in crisis are having panic attacks. If you've ever had a panic attack, they are extremely awful. And so that could be a reason that somebody is in crisis. If somebody's having thoughts of hurting themselves or somebody else, absolutely a crisis. If somebody experienced a recent sexual assault or experience of interpersonal violence, definitely a crisis. We also have students define their own crisis. So maybe it's not a panic attack, not suicidal, not recent trauma. But for example, you're used to being a straight A student and you get your first D, that's a crisis for most of us. Maybe somebody's experiencing their first breakup. That can be, just devastating. And it could be something that we just have no idea about, like somebody had a car accident. That's a crisis. So we really want people to know that you define your own crisis. And that really affects our relationship with students and your perception of our availability. So we certainly welcome just spontaneous feedback. We also solicit feedback from students in a variety of ways. We provide satisfaction surveys for students to give us anonymous feedback about what they liked and didn't like about CAPS. We also run focus groups, which are when we invite students to come at a particular time and tell us about their experiences, their perceptions of CAPS. Good, bad, and indifferent, we want to know. And so there are a number of different ways that we try to get feedback about our perception and our relationship with students. But let me ask you, what do you think the students think of their relationship with CAPS or perception of CAPS?
I think that a lot of students see CAPS as a great resource to have on campus, especially when we were able to be on campus. It was right there on easy access to be able to access CAPS. And I personally use CAPS as well. So I think that CAPS was very welcoming. And when you come in, they want to help you immediately. So I would think that the student relationship with CAPS is a real friendly relationship.
Thank you for sharing that you used our services. It really helps us address stigma around accessing mental health services because for lots of people, going to a therapist means you're crazy or weak or my problems aren't bad enough. So we really want people to understand that we want to remove those barriers. So when people share about their own experiences of being in counseling, it's really helpful. Mariah, did you have any thoughts about students' perception of CAPS? Maybe something that there's some criticism of?
No, I didn't hear any criticism. I also use CAPS, and I think it's a great resource. I know, yes, students think highly of it, and I'm sure that, yeah, they don't have anything bad to say, and it's just great that we're getting more information too, so that they can be more prepared when they come in.
Definitely. Thank you for the feedback.
So, my next question is there anything you do in particular to support housing students?
We are trying as much as we can to reach out to students who live on campus, especially now because usually we have more than 1,000 students living in housing, and this semester, fall 2020, we only have about 200 or so, and in all individual rooms. And so it can be much more isolating to live on campus than it typically is in pre-COVID era. So some of the things that we're doing is working directly with the resident advisors. So we are providing extra training. We always are part of RA training, but providing extra training. And then I meet with the RAs as a group periodically. It's been about once a month or so, where I can hear what their concerns are, what kinds of situations they're encountering with students in housing, and then provide support, tips on how to support your residents, as well as how to manage RA's own stress. Because if we don't take care of ourselves, it's very hard to take care of other people, and we try. This semester, our clinicians, my whole team of 7 clinicians, has been meeting with the RA and their floor. So we're giving RA support, but then we're also meeting with the residents in a group to go over similar things. What's stressing people out living on campus or virtual? What are some tips for managing anxiety or the loneliness that people can feel, isolation of living alone? And then we try to really market our CAPS materials, our CAPS services in housing. So having big posters about our 24/7 phone counseling and big posters of our group counseling options. And we're always looking for feedback from the RAs about how we can provide even more services, because housing, students in housing are really in a unique situation right now.
Thank you. Our next question is, what are the steps when someone comes into CAPS?
Great. Well, one of the hardest steps is you have to reach out to us. You need to call or email us. One of the things that's the hardest about the impact of the pandemic is that you can't just walk into the clinic. And typically, I think you were alluding to this earlier, is that one of the easiest things to do when we're open on campus is just walk in. Not that it's easy to walk in, but it's sometimes easier to walk in than pick up the phone. A lot of times we would have RAs or roommates walk over somebody that they were concerned about. Faculty or staff could walk somebody over. And so because we're missing that, we're aware that it's hard to pick up the phone and it's hard to make that initial email contact, but those are the primary ways. So once you reach out to us, boy, we will do all we can to get you an appointment or get you where you need to be. And so you'll talk to one of our amazing administrative assistants, one of whom is bilingual. So if somebody calls and they really just need to make an appointment in Spanish, that can happen as well. And so the first thing we'll do, besides get your name and phone number, and make sure you're a student, because we only provide services to students, CI students, and then we're going to determine what type of appointment you need, whether this is something that you could schedule an appointment in a week or two, or if this is a crisis and you need to be seen today, because that is critical for us to know how and when to make the appointment for you. So if it's a crisis, we will get you in the same day. Depending on your schedule, we can usually get people in within an hour or two, unless somebody calls at 9 and says, well, I'm at work until 3. Okay, well then we'll schedule you in the afternoon. If it's just a regularly scheduled appointment, then we'll find a time, usually within 2 weeks, depending on students' availability as well. Sometimes students want to work with a particular clinician who identifies in a certain way. And so depending on that clinician's availability, that could also impact the timing. So we schedule the appointment for you, and then we send an email confirmation, so you have that. And in the email confirmation, we send you a unique Zoom for Healthcare link with a passcode. So this is your link only. Nobody has any ability to jump on that. And then the day of the appointment, we're going to send you another link to fill out a brief questionnaire for us, so that when you meet with your clinician for the first time, they have a little bit more information, so that they don't have to ask you all of those questions at the beginning. And so you can make a little bit, be a little more efficient with the time that you have. So again, the hardest part is to pick up the phone or make that email contact. And sometimes people call after hours. We just had somebody call at 2 a.m. in crisis. We get a message immediately. And so we're able to reach out to the student right away and get that student in by 9 o'clock today. So we really have the ability to support people immediately, as long as we know you need some help. And sometimes what'll happen is somebody will say, oh, it's okay, I can wait and make an appointment in 2 weeks. And we will say, if something changes, please call back and let us know, because you can still be seen the same day. And then you may or may not keep that appointment in 2 weeks. We'll determine that. Sometimes parents will call and say, I want to schedule an appointment for my student. What we typically tell parents is, let's talk about how you can encourage your student to make the call, because you're adults and you have the autonomy to decide whether or not you want to make the appointment. Now, if the student is in the room with the parent who calls, or the sister or auntie who calls, then we'll say, can you give the phone to your student, and we'll talk to them and make that appointment. And that's just really important, because we want students to be able to advocate for themselves, because sometimes the parent thinks they need an appointment and the student's like, you know what, mom, you need the appointment. And so we don't want to assume that because the parent calls that the student needs the appointment. So we try to balance that out. We see a similar thing with faculty. Our faculty are very compassionate and caring for the most part, and they'll call and say, I want an appointment, and the student said that they're available tomorrow at 9. We will coach the faculty member on how to help the student contact us. So we really try to be mindful about how people get into our services, and protecting confidentiality at just all costs, truly. There's always exceptions, but the exceptions tend to be the parent calls and the student is downstairs, not in the room. And so we'll have to say, okay, well, can you get your student to come? But we respect your adultness and your level of autonomy that we really want to support.
Thank you. My next question is, what if someone is in crisis? How long will they have to wait for an appointment?
Excellent question. Typically, if we know they're in crisis, we can see them within an hour or two. And really all that's happening in that hour is we need to send you the Zoom link. You need to fill out your forms, and then we'll meet with the clinician. So we have clinicians on what we call triage. So all day, every day, there's a clinician who's available to see somebody who comes in crisis. So if somebody's in crisis on Friday and they call us at 4:30, we might get them in Monday at 9, because that's sort of the soonest that we can do. But we'll also make sure they know they can call our 24/7 phone counseling 4 times between now and then if they want. And so really we try to do it immediately while also working around people's schedules. One of the things that's a little tricky is somebody calls and says they're in crisis, but then they on Friday, and they say they can't be seen until next Thursday. We have to figure that out a little bit, because we still want to accommodate their availability, and we want to make sure that they can manage the crises between now and then, or sometimes help students realize, like, your crisis sounds really bad. How can we get you in today? And so part of that is just figuring out with the student what is going on. And it's really important to know that the administrative assistants are not going to say, what's your crisis? They're going to say, here's some examples of crises, or you can define your own crisis, A, B, C, D, or E. If they say define my own crisis, the clinician or the administrative assistant is not going to say, so what is it? Did you have that? That's not going to happen. They're going to say, okay, you're defining your own crisis. That's all we need to know. So we just want students to know they don't have, when they call, they don't have to say anything other than that it is a crisis or not. One of the things that we also do when we schedule an appointment is we make sure we ask somebody, what's your preferred name? What are your preferred pronouns? Because we are aware that that's concerns about sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. Those are reasons that people come in, not because it's a problem to identify as non-binary. It's because that identification can cause distress because of judgment from family members or discrimination from society. We also make sure that we ask you which email you want us to use, because typically for all CI business, students are expected to use their CI email. However, some students allow their family members to have access to that because they're paying the bill or something, and a student does not want their parent to see an email from us. So we will ask, and if they want us to use a personal email, we will. We ask people, can we send you text reminders? Can we leave a voicemail message? Can we send you an email appointment reminder? Because again, we really want to honor people's confidentiality. And there's ways that confidentiality could be inadvertently compromised if we think it's okay to send somebody an email to my CI and it's not. So those are some things that we'll ask students when we make that initial appointment, so that we can really be mindful of honoring those identities and preferences for students. Did that address your question about accessing crisis services?
Yes, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Our final question is there anything else you want students to know about CAPS?
Oh my gosh, there's so many things I want to make sure you know. If there's one or two things I would highlight is that our clinicians, all of us, psychologists, social workers, case managers, psychiatrists, administrative assistants, we specialize in working with college students who are experiencing a range of difficulties. We don't work in a hospital for a reason. We don't work in private practice for a reason. We work in a college counseling center at CI because this is where we want to be. And we really are conscious of the fact that this is a critical developmental time for people. And in the age of the pandemic and all of the racial injustice that we're finally starting to address as a community and as a nation, we need clinicians who are really understanding of the complexities of what students are experiencing right now. So I want you to know that we are all trained as what we call generalists, which means we're trained to address any concerns that college students bring to our attention. We also are all specialized. So for example, I specialize in trauma and post-traumatic stress and mindfulness. That's what my dissertation was on. It's what my research is on. And it's been the focus of my clinical practice is trauma. Some of our other clinicians focus on exploration of the intersectionality of identity. Now, again, as generalists, we all study that and integrate that into our practice, but there's some of our clinicians who are more involved with particular groups on campus. And so there's the idea that we are all able to address whatever concerns are being brought to our attention, as well as specializing. And that's why we might make some referrals between the clinic, between clinicians as well, not just externally. And so I think the last thing that I would mention is that we're talking all about counseling services for you as students, for yourself. Often it's not me who feels like I need counseling, but I'm sure concerned about my partner, my roommate, my classmate. And so we want you all to know that even if you feel like you never need counseling services, we want you to know that you can refer a friend and how to get that friend to come in. And that might mean you come and talk to us, not because you are having difficulties, but because you want to know how to talk to your friend about the referral. So we just want you to know you don't have to be in crisis to come use our services. One of the other things that I want to highlight is that I've been focused on sort of problems that people come in with in terms of anxiety and depression. But we also work with students who want to just grow as people and as human beings. And for example, athletes, they want to have performance enhancement support for how they can be more confident in their athletic skills. We're not teaching them how to hit a ball, but we are teaching them how to maybe address some of the angst that they have about being in a competitive environment. So I think that would be all I would want to highlight. Are there any things that either of you want to make sure students know as well?
Personally, I think that I would recommend CAPS to anyone. I think it's a very welcoming environment, and you can come to them for anything. And I really liked the services when I went there, and it was a very judge-free environment. They really took my situation in an unbiased way, and they really helped me with my situation. So if you're ever in a situation where you think you need counseling or psychological services, I would definitely recommend CAPS to anyone that goes to CI.
I'm so glad you mentioned the non-judgment. That is our role. We're not here. People get judged all the time. You judge yourselves, we judge ourselves. This is a safe space that you don't have to worry about that. We're not necessarily advice givers either, but we can certainly provide lots of tips and skills. That's a great point, non-judgmental. Mariah, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add, just because I've done counseling before too, I think just saying your problems out loud makes them like you feel like they're so big, and once you say it, it gets like a little smaller, and it helps just to talk about it with someone. I know a lot of people hold things in, so just
Mhm.
being able to talk to someone is really important. So I think that, yeah, if you're scared to pick up the phone, just do it. 'Cause it'll be worth it.
That's great. And one other thing is that we all feel some relief from talking to friends or family members. But friends and family members can have a lot of judgments and opinions, and often when you talk to a family member about a concern, they then tell you about their concern, and it ends up, maybe being a little bit more about them than you need it. With counseling, it's all about you. I'm not going to then tell you what's going on for me. It's really going to be focused on you and your concerns. So those are great points to make. You
Okay.
all have wonderful questions. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk.
Yeah, thank you for meeting with us today. This is really good information for everyone to know.
Great. And I, as the director, have an open door policy. So if you want to talk and you want to meet with me, I'm available. It's not that you can only see the other clinicians. I work with clients as well. And I really value the feedback that I receive. And so I mean it when I say, please reach out to me as well if there's something that I, as the director, can assist with. Thank you both so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank
We'll see
you.
you next time.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye.